Hello and welcome to Veteran Voice. My name is Larry McCullaugh. I'll be the moderator here today. And we are honored to have some World War II veterans with us today that we're going to have share some experiences with us. On the far left is Adrian Friels. He's a World War II veteran. In the middle is Mr. Paul Yonker, also a World War II veteran. And over here on the right is Charles Turok, who is a World War II veteran. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for being here today and welcome you. I know that you all have heard, you've been referred to as the greatest generation, and I certainly feel that way. My father was also a World War II veteran. He was a paratrooper, and I'd like to just start by saying how honored I am to be here with you today, and how proud I am just to know all three of you, and thank you for your service to our country. I'm going to start over with Adrian. What I'd like you to do, to open with or to start with, let's talk about Pearl Harbor and how you heard about it, and if you were in the military when that happened, or exactly how you got involved in World War II.
No, I was still in high school in Pearl Harbor, and I didn't go in service till 43. So I just remember hearing about it in high school, but that's before I go back as it's concerned.
What branch of the service did you go into?
I went in the Navy. I was a turret gunner on a TBM Avenger torpedo bomber with Air Group 1, Torpedo Squadron 1, flying off the USS Bennington, which was a carrier CV-20.
Okay. Paul, how about you? How did you hear about Pearl Harbor, and where were you?
I was downtown with a group of guys, and then we heard it on the radio. Back then we didn't have TVs. Heard it on the radio, and then we stayed up long enough to hear the president, I think that same night, declared war, if I'm not mistaken. And we was young, and all of us just talked about, well, we better get ready to go. Well, I didn't get much time to even think about whether I was going to join or not. I got drafted right quick. And so January, actually December, I went to Evansville, I think, for examination. Then in January the 16th, I went to Fort Benjamin Harrison, Indiana. The snow was at least 4 foot deep up there.
So you went into the Army then?
I went into the Army. I was in 199th Anti-Aircraft Division.
Okay. All right, Charles, how about you?
Well, I was graduating from high school, even though I was just 16 years old, and I was enrolled in a Splendor class at the University of Illinois, and was at the time of the war broke out, or we heard about it over the radio. I was playing in the intramural football league at Champaign, Illinois. Well, actually, it was outside of Champaign. So the news came from somebody telling us that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor, and we quit our football game and all gathered around a tiny radio. I guess there must have been 25 of us there and listening to the news reports. But I went in the war, went into the military. I was drafted in April of 1943, and was in the Army and went through several extensive trainings and ended up in Europe slightly after D-Day.
And what did you do in the Army? Were you an infantryman or?
Well, I had multi-training, but believe it or not, after I finished my training as in armored infantry, it came through one day and wanted to know who could type, and I didn't know why they wanted that, but I raised my hand, and about 2 or 3 of us did. And it seems that they were needing people in the Signal Corps. Signal Corps was short of people that could type. Although I didn't do much typing in the Signal Corps, because my work was with a small gadget like that you didn't really have to know how to type, what we called the M209. And I went overseas with 3118 Signal Service Battalion. And we had what it said, signal service. We had pole climbers, and they laid lines. We had radio men, and we had message men. And I would receive the message from the radio man and convert it into legal and then understandable language, and would give it to the Well, I would usually give it to my sergeant. I was a technician at the time, and they would pass it on to the higher headquarters, I'm sure.
So you were the one that made sure everybody had some idea what was going on all over the place then.
Well, you know, they didn't have any cell phones in there. Some of the people don't understand that, but even our telephones, the lines had to be laid, and we were moving so fast most of the time in Europe that it was impossible to lay lines. So radio signals and radio communication was the most prominent method of communication. Sometimes they send the messages out in clear, but most of the time they use at least a restricted or confidential coding of the messages, and it had to be decoded, and that's what I did, decode the messages, and all across Europe following the armies, one army and after the other, and we were, even though I was in the 3118th, and you earlier asked about reunions, our unit was so fractionated. I was a group of about 7 people that was following part of the time the 3rd Army. I don't even know what 3118, but 3118 Battalion at one time, and another time we were just attached to Army headquarters, and we would just be just kind of like orphans, but we were very vital to the communication system that was in existence at that time.
But that was fascinating. Adrian, I was going to ask you all, I know that my father used to share some experiences that he had in World War II. Have you got any particular story or experience that you went through that really stands out in your mind you'd like to share with the viewers?
Well, one of my funniest, I guess, is when I went to boot camp at Great Lakes, and being away from home for the first time, being just a scared kid, I had to have some dental work done. So I went in there, and this dentist, he said, "I don't know why they give me this job. I was a plumber before I come to the Navy." So I guess he'd pull that on about everybody that came in there. But so some more memorable experience. At the end of World War II, which was treaty was signed on September 2nd, 1945, which, by the way, this year will be the 60th anniversary of the end of World War II. Our squadron led 1,500 carrier planes and 400 B-29s over the USS Missouri right after they signed the treaty. So I think that was quite a bit of memory, but I think more which stands in my mind, after the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the Japanese surrendered August the 15th, I believe it was, we would leave our carrier and fly inland and find prisoner of war camps, and they would have maybe on the barracks spelled out 400 POWs, and we would drop cigarettes, candy, food, magazines, and I never will forget, it looked like our carrier planes could fly pretty low, and I never will forget the look on some of their faces as we'd fly over, knowing that was the end of the war.
That had to be very rewarding to know that
was.
you were helping out guys who'd been in such an awkward, terrible situation. Paul, have you got any experiences that stand out in your mind that you'd like to share?
Well, I got a couple, actually. One time, I don't know if you realize what a job it was, but we had to take those 40 millimeter guns out of the gun pit, move them up on the front lines, because it came down that there was Japanese had gotten across this mountain and was supposed to be advancing towards us. Well, we went up on the front lines where the infantry were and set those 40 millimeter guns up in the gun, dug a hole, put the gun pits and everything just like we had, and even had trenches where we could crawl. Well, we got this air raid. This first night we was up there, and they had this machine gun set up. It didn't shoot the big gun, but they saw something out there moving, and it looked like a man's head. There was a stump out there, and I bet they probably shot 3,000 rounds out of that 50 caliber machine gun, and we finally just stopped. The next morning, they looked. One out there looked, and it was a stump bear, all right, but it was what they call a honey bear. Was on that thing. It was going over. That stump was just blown out of the ground.
So there was a lot of fire directed in that area.
Another time, when we was on Bougainville, we sitting right next to the jungle, and they had gotten some 90 millimeter, just similar to our 90 millimeter guns up in through the caves in that mountain. Was shooting direct down. And I was in my bed taking a nap this afternoon because when we got those guns clean, we didn't have nothing to do unless we had an air raid. I heard this shell fall, and boy, I was just in my shorts. I come out of that cot. Next thing, I heard another, man, I hit the floor, and it just clipped the whole, we had to get a new tent because it just blew the whole top out of the tent. But we didn't, none of us get hurt. We all hit the floor.
You were just in the right place at the right time when that happened, huh?
That's right.
Charles, how about you?
Well, I think I'd like to maybe relate 3 experiences that happened to me. First one was when we landed on Omaha Beach. Now, I didn't land D-Day. I was about 3 weeks afterwards. And when we got well into over the beachhead and on the higher ground, it was extremely muddy, extremely muddy. And the thing that I remember and still can hardly relate to, but it still is very fit in my mind, is the stench that was there from the rotting bodies that were couldn't be found. I mean, I don't mean bodies. I'm talking about arms and legs. Now there wasn't a lot, but it doesn't take a lot of rotting body to make a stench that's very penetrates your nose and really is just hard to relate. The second one is during the Battle of the Bulge. I was personally in Namur, Belgium, and that was not at exactly the spearhead, but close to it. And I had been on the road like all the other boys for many months, and mail doesn't always catch up with you. I really feel sorry for people trying to deliver mail because that's got to be a nightmare when you're on the move all the time to try to find different people. But we were going to be there for at least a couple of days, we hoped. And I had gotten half a bag of packages and mails from my sister and friends from over here. And we had to snatch up all that and move in 1 hour's notice. The first sergeant come through and he said, haul your bodies out of here and let's go. Well, there'd been a breakthrough and we've got to move back. We've been ordered to move back. And the last one I'd like to tell you about is near the end of the war, then General Eisenhower was in a house pretty close to where we were, and I received a message that said eyes only for General Eisenhower. And when you received a message like that, the technician was obligated to deliver that to the recipient, and the recipient was General Eisenhower. Well, I went to, I didn't show the message to my sergeant, but I told him what I had, and he said, well, you'll have to get over there. And I had to get a Jeep to get over to where he was. And I went into this house where I was told that he was, and went in. The first person I run into was a brigadier general. And he wanted to know what my business was, and I told him, and he said, well, you'll have to go in there. And I thought I was going to see General Eisenhower. I went in there, and there was Kay Summersby. I don't know if you're familiar with her or not. She was at that time, she was a British major. And I told her what I had. She says, just give it to me. She called me sergeant. I wasn't, but she called me sergeant. Said, just give it to me, sergeant. I said, I'm supposed to give it to General Eisenhower. She said, I said, give it to me. So when a major tells you to do something, you do it. So I gave her the message, so I didn't get to see General Eisenhower.
Oh, I'll bet that was a little disappointing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
She was General Eisenhower's driver.
Yeah.
Well, I understand, and female companion.
Yeah.
That was well.
So y'all were complete barbarians over there.
Yeah.
At least had some ladies that were helping you out in the war. Adrian, before we went on the air, I noticed that you had some statistics about World War II veterans and stuff. Would you like to share that with us?
Yes, Charlie and I went on the World War II trip to Washington, D.C., which was very touching, I would say, because they say there were 16 million Americans in uniform during World War II, and over 400,000 died. Plus, at our ages, they have to be in the late 70s, 80s, and 90s now. It's close to 1,100 dying each day, which is pretty soon going to deplete the World War II veterans. And also, from what I read, I think it was 50 million people killed during World War II. I mean, that's civilians and everything, which is a huge number.
How many million?
50 million.
My goodness, it truly was a world war, and everyone was involved. And like I say, I have nothing but respect for you guys for everything that you did.
And they say that
He was counting civilians too,
Yeah.
wasn't he?
Yeah.
And they say that grown men don't cry, but at the World War II memorial, I saw several break down, which I might shed a few tears myself.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's just remembering the fellows who didn't make it back. Paul, did you go on the trip to Washington,
No,
D.C.?
I got sick and didn't get to make it. But I sure wish it would. And one of these days, I hope I can do it again if they go again.
Charles, did you get a chance to go to?
Yes, I did go, and I was on the same bus with Adrian, and his wife and my wife were friends before that. And of course, I've known Adrian, I guess, close to 50 years. He worked at Carbide, and so did I. But it was, a lot of people thought the bus ride would be a bit much, but I'll be very honest, it went pretty fast. Now, we read a lot of papers and books and things and talked and slept and one thing or another on the trip, but it certainly wasn't that fatiguing to me. I enjoyed it and certainly wouldn't say I wouldn't go again, but I don't plan on it right now.
But it was well worth the trip. Then the memorial itself is very.
The memorial is yes, very beautiful, and it was magnificent, as a matter of fact. And yes, it brought back many memories to me. And there had inscriptions of all nature around there by famous people, and it was very important. And I think it was, of course, it was time that something be done for the World War II veterans, and we've had memorials for almost every major war.
It was overdue. I remember times that I'd seen the certain memorials in Washington, D.C. that were about certain battles, but there was never one that would actually cover the entire war, and it was long overdue. And I think that the movie Private Ryan, when that came out, had a lot to do with it. I think that was. Did you all see the movie Private Ryan? And Adrian, did you see it? How did you feel about that? Did you think it was?
Well, of course, I was in the Navy, but it would probably mean a lot more to Charles and Paul. But I thought the movie was, I tell you, some of the scenes were fairly, I guess you'd call gory, but.
Well, there were scenes, I'm sure, that existed. You know, it was no doubt. When people get shot and get killed and get blown apart, it leaves a gory scene. Not any way that you can avoid that, I don't think. It's possible that some of them should have been left with maybe less visual graphics than there was, but I'm absolutely certain that scenes to that effect existed many times.
Paul, did you get a chance to see the movie?
No, I haven't seen it. I'm still waiting. I'm going to see it.
It's like you said, I know that some of the violence was very graphic, but then again, like you said, when you're in a combat situation, I know it was in World War II. I'm sure it was in Korea. I know it was in Vietnam. There's really nothing pretty about war.
No.
It's a very brutal thing to have to go through, and that's why you men have the respect that you do, because a lot of people up until that movie, I don't think really gave a lot of thought to what you all had experienced as young men and what you had to go through. And I think that's what triggered a lot of the patriotism that we're still experiencing today. And that's what I think got you all the title as the greatest generation, because you truly are. Adrian, tell me, at the end of the war, how did you find out about it, and what was it like when you came home?
Well, like I said, we were on the carrier, and we got news when they dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And a lot of people criticized President Truman for dropping the bombs. But I don't think any service person thinks different, because the invasion of Japan was due November the 1st that year, and the treaty was signed September the 2nd. And they predicted that there would probably been at least 250,000 killed during that invasion of Japan, because they had already started, you know, the Japanese people, they worship Hirohito, which is their emperor, and they had the kamikaze pilots, which they were taught to take off and not come back. And at Okinawa, there was over 200 planes hit, and I think around 20 sunk. And it was really getting serious, and they still had plenty of kamikazes left.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I think that saved us from invasion Japan, which we'd been flying air support. And I don't think, I imagine a lot of the troops in Europe, like Charlie and Paul, well, Paul was in the Pacific, but like Charlie, they would have been probably rotated back to the invasion Japan. So I don't blame him a bit for dropping the bomb. I mean, he got criticized a lot. So when the Japanese actually surrendered, I believe it was August 15th. They didn't sign the treaty until September 2nd. But I say like then we were leading that air patrol at, they call it Victory Air Parade over the USS Missouri when they signed the treaty.
So you feel that dropping the bomb probably saved a lot of American lives, a lot of lives?
Definitely.
Okay.
And probably Japanese too.
Oh, yeah. But they'd already start teaching the Japanese older men, women, and children to take pitchforks, spears, or anything else to repel the invaders. And if Hirohito hadn't agreed, some of the admirals and generals didn't want to give up. And after he said they'd had to save Japan, a lot of the admirals and generals, they committed suicide.
Paul, do you remember where you were at and how you
Yeah, I
heard
remember
about the
very
other war?
well. I had malaria fever, and I was in a Navy hospital
Oh my goodness.
when that went off. And I was just about ready to go back to my outfit, and there's two Navy boys. I mean, on each side of me was a Navy man, and they got two kinds of beer issued to them when they announced that the war was. They signed the armistice, and they gave me, each one of them gave me one of theirs. I had two, and they just had one. And I drank those beers, and I got a relapse, and almost missed coming home with my outfit. But that's where I was, and I was sick. I'm telling you, malaria fever. People here, I've heard them say that, he just got a case of malaria. They don't know what malaria is. I had 105 and 106 fever, and when they was giving us sometimes a half of those Adabrines, I was taking 9 of them a day, and I finally got rid of it. But then I got it again on the ship coming home, down in that old hole.
You couldn't get enough of it, huh? Charles, how about you? You remember when the end of the war came?
Yes, I mentioned earlier that I was involved in a battle of the Bulge, not as just in the support unit. And of course, if you read any of the history, you knew that the Bulge didn't last a great length of time. And I certainly didn't have a diary or calendar, but I know it wasn't too many days after that, probably a couple of weeks, and I may be wrong on that. But we were back into Germany and moving towards Berlin. I can't tell you where I was because, but it was between Frankfurt and Berlin someplace when they announced the end of the war in Europe. Now that was actually May the 8th, the end of that war, and into that campaign rather than not the war. And then, of course, we had wasn't long, we had a little leisure, and since it was springtime, I tried out for the division baseball team and made it. And we were having European championships in southern France in August when the war over in the Pacific ended, when the bombs were dropped, the 2 bombs. And I got acquainted with a young man, or in fact he was on our baseball team, by the name of Mike Garcia. And he almost got us the European championship. He happened to be later a Major League Baseball player with the Cleveland Indians, where he won 150 games. And we didn't know it, that he was that good a ball player at the time. I was 19 and he was 20. But we almost won the European championships because of him, not because of me. But I was in southern France when the bombs were dropped, and I'm not sure where I was on the 2nd of September, but probably we were back home. But I was enjoying myself then.
Well, I'll tell you guys, we're getting near the end of the program here, so before we do run out of time, I want to tell you I've really enjoyed you all sharing your experiences with me. It reminds me of back when my father was alive, and we used to sit around and talk about some of the things that happened in the Army. And I remember he told me at one point, he said, you know, someday you'll look back on this and laugh. And I can remember at the time thinking, you know, I'm never going to look back on any of this and laugh. But the older I get, I find out the wiser he was, because I can sit back now and swap stories and love to hear about your experiences. And I know that we're all involved with the DAV and the VFW and the other service organizations, and that's part of the camaraderie that's there. And I really do appreciate you all coming on the program today, sharing your experiences with it. It's been my pleasure and my honor to be here with you guys today, so thank you very much.
Well, we certainly appreciate the opportunity to relive some of our history, and I'm sure the other gentlemen feel the same way I do. I don't mind telling about it. I wasn't a hero. I just did my duty, but I was over there 18 months and waded through the mud, and had some nights where I slept under hedgerows, but it all seems like a dream now.
Well, people who have never served, and even those of us who have served, as far as I'm concerned, you guys are heroes. So thanks again for your service to our country. Thanks for coming on the show today. We really appreciate it. And we'd like to thank the viewers for joining us today. We'll be making other episodes in the future. If you have ideas or suggestions, please contact PCC Channel 2. We'll try to take them under advisement. So until the next time, this is Larry McCullaugh. Thank you very much.